Welcome, and now we move on to the next part. This is Tina from TinaHeals.com, and I'm discussing HPB's magnum opus, The Secret Doctrine. So watch the other videos if you haven't already, and let me know what you think. So we discuss how time and again Egyptian and the Vedic scriptures have been misinterpreted by overzealous Christian missionaries. We have seen that how the Chaldean religion is lost, the ancient Babylonian wisdom is lost. Okay. Now, Socrates, a historian of the 5th century, and Syncellus, vice patriarch of Constantinople, 8th century, both denounce him as the most daring and desperate forger. So here we are talking about Berosus, from whom we learn about in this modern era only his writings survive. What he wrote about the Chaldean, the wisdom of the Chaldean Magi. Okay. So it is likely then that he dealt more tenderly with the Chaldean records, which were already menacing the new religion so rashly accepted. So that with the exception of those more than doubtful fragments, the entire Chaldean sacred literature has disappeared from the eyes of the profane, as completely as the lost Atlantis. A few facts that were contained in the Berosian history are given in part 2 of volume 2 and may throw a great light on the true origin of the fallen angels personified by bell and dragon. Turning now to the oldest Aryan literature, or the Rig Veda, the student will find, following strictly in this the data furnished by the said Orientalists themselves, that although the Rig Veda contains only about 10,580 verses, or 1028,028 hymns, in spite of the Brahmanas and the mass of glosses and commentaries, it is not understood correctly to this day. Why is this so? Evidently because the Brahmanas, the scholastic and oldest treatises on the primitive hymns, themselves require a key, which the Orientalists have failed to secure. So it is not possible to understand the Rig Veda in its complexity, in its full grandeur, without these keys. So the Brahmanas are, they kind of complement the Vedas, but the Brahmanas cannot themselves be understood without a key. So this is futile really, and the Orientalists will never ever grasp the true meaning of any of the sentences. What do the scholars say of Buddhist literature? Have they got it in its completeness? Absolutely not. Notwithstanding the 325 volumes of the Kanjur and the Tanjur of the Northern Buddhists, each volume, we are told, weighing from 4 to 5 pounds, nothing in truth is known of Lamaism. Yet the sacred canon of the Southern Church is said in the Sadharma Lamkara to contain 29368000 letters or exclusive of treatises and commentaries, 5 or 6 times the amount of the matter contained in the Bible, the latter in the words of Professor Max Muller, rejoicing only in 3567180 letters. Notwithstanding then these 325 volumes, in reality there are 333. Kanjur comprising 108 and Tanjur 225 volumes. The translators, instead of supplying us with correct versions, have interwoven them with their own commentaries for the purpose of justifying the dogmas of their several schools. Moreover, according to a tradition preserved by the Buddhist schools of the south and of the north, The sacred canon comprised originally 80,000 or 84,000 tracts, but most of them were lost, so that there remained but 6,000. But the professor tells us Dionysus, lost as usual for Europeans. But who can be quite sure that they are likewise lost for Buddhists and Brahmins? Considering the sacredness of for the Buddhists of every line written upon Buddha or his good law, the loss of nearly 78,000 tracts does seem miraculous. Had it been vice versa, everyone acquainted with the natural course of events would subscribe to the statement that of these 78,000, 5,000 or 6,000 treatises might have been destroyed during the persecutions in and immigration from India. But as it is well ascertained that Buddhist arhats began their religious exodus for the purpose of propagating the new faith beyond Kashmir and the Himalayas as early as the year 300 before our era, and reached China in the year 61 AD, when Kashyapa, at the invitation of the Emperor Mingti, went there to acquaint the Son of Heaven with the tenets of Buddhism. It does seem strange to hear the Orientalists speaking of such a loss as though it were really possible. They do not seem to allow for one moment the possibility that the text may be lost only for the West and for themselves, or that the Asiatic people should have unparalleled boldness to keep their most sacred records out of the reach of foreigners, thus refusing to deliver them to the profanation and misuse of races even so vastly superior to themselves. So here HPP postulates that maybe the Buddhists and the Brahmins did not want to open all their occult traditions for the West because a lot of it was perverted. A lot of it was misinterpreted. Even if you look at the tradition of Tantra, if you look at New Tantra, it's nothing but sexual bliss being paraded around as enlightenment. So for this very reason, Blavatsky thinks that a lot of the Eastern traditions and the original manuscripts have been kept hidden. They are not lost, so to say, to the world. The lamas, the arhats, they have access to it, but they are lost to you and me. Okay, so this is what she postulates over here. Owing to the expressed regrets and numerous confessions of almost every one of the Orientalists, the public may feel sufficiently sure that that the students of ancient religions have indeed very few data upon which to build such final conclusions as they generally do about old religions, and B, that such lack of data does not prevent them in the least from dogmatizing. One would imagine that thanks to the numerous records of the Egyptian theogony and mysteries preserved in the classics and in a number of ancient writers, the rites and dogmas of pharaonic Egypt ought to be well understood at least, better at any rate than the two abstruse philosophies and pantheism of India, of whose religion and language Europe had hardly any idea before the beginning of the present century. Along the Nile and on the face of the whole country, there stand to this hour exhumed yearly and daily fresh relics which eloquently tell their own history. Still, it is not so. The learned Oxford philologist himself confesses the truth by saying that we see still standing the pyramids and the ruins of temples and labyrinths, their well covered, their walls covered with hieroglyphic inscriptions, and with the strange pictures of gods and goddesses on rolls of papyrus which seem to defy the ravages of time. We have even fragments of what may be called the sacred books of the Egyptians. Yet though much has been deciphered in the ancient records of that mysterious race, The mainspring of the religion of Egypt and the original intention of its ceremonial worship are far from being fully disclosed to us. So we do not understand Egypt. We do not understand its deeper mysteries because we do not have the keys. Here again, the mysterious hieroglyphic documents remain, but the keys by which alone they become intelligible have disappeared. Nevertheless, having found that there is a natural connection between religion and language. Secondly, there was a common Aryan religion before the separation of the Aryan race. A common Semitic religion before the separation of the Semitic race. And a common Turanian religion before the separation of the Chinese and the other tribes belonging to the Turanian class, having in fact only discovered 3 ancient centers of religion and 3 centers of language. And though is entirely ignorant of those primitive religions and languages as of their origin, the professor does not hesitate to declare that a truly historical basis for a scientific treatment of the principal religions of the world has been gained. It's not possible really if you look at it. She's being sarcastic. A scientific treatment of a subject is no guarantee for its historical basis. And with such scarcity of data on hand, no philologist, even among the most eminent, is justified in giving out his own conclusions for historical facts. Like, you cannot bring in personal dogmatic conclusions to these things because you just don't know. Not your fault, but the keys have not been given to you, right? Okay, no doubt the eminent Orientalist has proved thoroughly to the world's satisfaction that according to Grimm's law of phonetic roots, Odin and Buddha are 2 different personages, quite distinct from each other, and he has shown it scientifically. When, however, he takes the opportunity of saying in the same breath that Odin was worshipped as the supreme deity during a period long anterior to the age of Veda and of Homer, he has not the slightest historical basis for this. I mean, Odin is not older than the Vedas, you know. It's just incorrect. He makes history and facts subservient to his own conclusions, which may be very scientific in the sight of Oriental scholars, but yet very wide of the mark of actual truth. So again, there's always this conflict between science and between myth and tradition and religion and philosophy. Okay, I mean, what is scientific? Only if you can empirically observe something. Does that make it any real when we know that we actually see less than 1% of the electromagnetic spectrum? We hear less than 1% of the acoustic spectrum. Is it correct on our part to think that the information we gain from interacting with the world with our 5 senses, how can we take that as a law? Okay, it can't be Hammurabi's law, right? I mean, we see less than 1%. We see a minuscule part of what's really around us. We hear the frequency that's allotted to us. We hear less than 1%. What is going on out there? You know, with the help of infrared, we see heat, we see temperature. We can't normally, can we? There are people who can see millions of colors. So, I mean, we cannot limit the truth to what our 5 senses can observe. That is what she is trying to say, that you cannot conclude or deduce that something is non-scientific because there is no empirical way to prove it. Just with the many worlds theory. Many people are like, so what if there are parallel universes? So what if there are many worlds? This cannot be demonstrated with an empirical experiment, what we can see, how do we take it to be true and what difference does it make? But it is this human quest of knowing, of learning, that keeps us moving towards discovering these keys, lost keys that Blavatsky speaks about. I hope you're enjoying that. Join me for the next segment. Thank you.